Hello there guys, so we left off last time I believe with operators. We had a little bit of a look into the if and the else statement as well. And the next thing on the agenda is to look a little bit into functions. So if I actually open up preparation is key. Yeah, I didn't prepare. Right, anyway, onwards and upwards. Okay, so I'm going to look a little bit into functions. Now to declare a function, it's pretty simple. You just use the word function. Okay, so that is what we use to declare a function. Okay. Now, if we were to call upon a function, we would, for instance, I'm going to refer back to a function I may have already used, rand. Okay. Okay, so if I do that, I don't know if that's going to print anything. No, it's not. I need to put echo. What that's going to do is produce a number between 1000 and 9999. So that's a function itself, one that's already set up by PHP, and we use the word rand, or random number, which is what it's short for, to reference the function. And then we have two curly brackets, which are used to hold parameters of this function. Now there could be two parameters of this function, the first one being the start number, and the last one being the end number, or the finishing number, separated by a comma. So that's essentially separating the two options we have. In this specific function, they aren't options, okay, they are required. You have to have at least two values, because you've got to give it a range to create a random number from either this number to that number. So that's how we would call a function. So if we're going to look into how we're going to create our own function, okay, bearing in mind those things, we need a name in order to reference this function. So I'm just going to call this one my function, okay? And just as when I called the function there, I'm going to have two curly brackets, like that, and then two squiggly brackets, okay? Just like that. Now, you notice where I named the function, my function with capital F, much like variables, I believe exactly the same rules apply for a function name as a variable name. So it's not going to recognise it as a capital F in my function. It's purely just for my kind of ease of reading, really. So there you go, my function. So what we're going to do, inside these curly brackets, which is going to be our operational code, anything inside these curly brackets is what the function will perform. So I'm going to put echo, this is my function. Okay, so that's an echo statement just like we did before. And let's have a look at what that does. Okay, nothing. It's done absolutely nothing. So we've created our function with echo, and you'll notice that it hasn't actually done anything. Whereas before, when we've used echo, it's printed it to screen. The reason for this is because all we've done is actually made our function, okay? Our function is going to echo out, this is my function, but we haven't actually used our function. All we've done is created it, so we've declared it as a function. In order to call upon this function, we would have to use my function, just like that, with those, and press F5, and it's printed out, this is my function. Now something to note, okay, if I was to change this to return, okay, instead of echo like we used to use it, return is mainly used as within functions. The reason for this is because if I was to call this now, and I refresh the page, it's not actually done anything. It's not printed it to the screen, because that's not what return is used for. Return is used for if I was to, for instance, call this function within you know, some form of code. In fact, if what I'm going to do is if rand 1 2 is equal to 1, return 1, else return 0. And we can change that to, I'm going to use true and false. Okay, so again, calling my function is going to do nothing. The reason for that is because we've called the function. Sorry, pardon me. We've called our function, and our function has run this block of code. So it's created a random number between 1 and 2. It's done that, and it's figured out whether or not it's equal to 1. If it was equal to 1, it's returned true. If not, it's returned false. The difference is that returning doesn't print to the screen. Okay, it doesn't echo out anything to the screen. Okay, all it does is allows me to do something like this. So if my function is equal to true, then echo the number. Let's do this. Yes. Echo else. That's what I need to do. Echo no. That'll do. No. Yes. No. 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 Yes. No. Yes. No. 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 Yes. No. Yes. Yes. No. Yes. No. Yeah, we're probably going to get a bit bored of that. It's not a very fun function. But essentially what it's doing is it is printing a result or returning a result that PHP understands. It's not returning a result that necessarily the viewer of the page will understand. Okay, so what this allows us to do is return results or findings, okay, without it being printed to the screen. Sometimes there's a range of functions that we want to go through, and whittle our way through these functions and statements, and when we finally get to some kind of ending with it, we may want to print something or change something on the screen. So what this allows us to do is essentially return information to PHP's memory as opposed to the screen, and it's very helpful within functions. So instead of writing all of that, which essentially is that, which isn't a very good example, but we can just refer to this one bit of code. Okay. Now imagine this block of code was, let's say, twice the size. It saves us from writing that over and over again. We can just call my function. So let's change this my function, and it's something I want to do, but we're probably going to go on to do that in our little program. So what I'm going to go on to do is I'm going to, inside here, let me just delete everything that's inside here and this bit of code here. I'm going to put in here number, you know, just as we declared a variable, we're going to use the $ and number. Okay. Now, if for instance I declared the variable number here and assigned a value of 10, okay, inside here, that number is not going to be able to be referenced. Okay, this is a global variable. Inside my function, everything inside here are local variables, including this. Okay, that's a local variable, so we won't be able to reference anything outside of this function. Somewhat, again, it's a little bit more complicated to explain than that. But essentially, we have our own scope of variables inside here. Okay, this function can only remember variables within this function. Okay, so variables outside, although sometimes you can use them within a function, generally you don't. Okay, this is what this is used for, is passing global variables to the local variable stream. Okay, so that's going to be our number. Now, what I want this function to do is figure out whether or not my number is odd or even. Okay. Now, I'm going to do a way of doing this that some people might think is wrong, but it's the first method that comes to my head. Okay. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a number. Actually, I'm going to do results. So I've just been doing a tutorial on JavaScript, so I'm trying to flick back between the two. And I used to be able to do it very easily, not so much anymore. Result is going to be number divided by 2. Okay. Now, what this will do is it's going to divide whatever number I pass to this function by 2, thus giving me either a decimal number or a whole number. Okay. The reason for this is obviously if you divide something by 2 and it does divide by 2, it is an even number. If it doesn't, it's an odd number. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explode I'm just going to call this explode. Okay. Explode, and this is a function that's used to break apart a string. For instance, if I had something like 5.15, okay, what it's going to do is it's going to give us the option to break apart this string. So if I chose to break it apart on the decimal point, what would happen is I'd end up with 5 in one variable. For instance, what it will be is it will be explode, it won't be 0, is equal to 5, and explode 1. Now this is the bit I'm unsure of, I always have to play about with this, will be 1.5, okay, so it's not actually going to pass it as a string, as an integer, it's going to pass it as a string, okay, so somewhere along here though, it may be there, it actually keeps the point, so it's either going to be there or it will be there, we'll find out. So we're going to explode on the dot, and the string that we're going to use is result. And bear with me while I just try and figure out. Equals would help, wouldn't it? Wondering why it was giving me an error then, but that would be why. Don't know. Let's do 13. So it's got rid of the decimal, so ignore what I just said. It actually destroys the decimal. Whatever you break it on, it's going to destroy, so it won't be there anymore. So what we then want to do is we've exploded it. What I'm going to do, because we're going to go on the assumption that if it's an even number, then there isn't going to be a decimal. Okay, so we'll have exploded it on that, but it will basically go, well, I've still only got one piece because there wasn't a dot. Okay. So I'm going to go if explode 1. Now it's important to note that with arrays, which is what this is, this function will produce an array. So this is how you access an array. We'll go into this a little bit further in a bit. But arrays start at 0, not 1. Like we start counting, for instance, from 1, 2, 3. PHP starts counting at 0. It goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's something just to remember. So 0 would be our first one. What we're asking is if there's a second one. Because if there's a second one, there was a decimal place. Okay, so if there was a decimal, so if that's equal to true, then we're going to return. I'm going to change the name of this function to is even. Return false because it's not even. Okay. Else I'm going to return true. Okay. Now this is a neat little way. I'm going to say if is even, and I'm going to put in a variable here just to make it easier for me. My number. My number is even. Again, let's go with 13. Let's run this. Let's see if it works. 13 is odd. Let's change that to 10. Undefined offset. 15. That's not what I wanted to do, you donut. Sorry, I'm just actually making sure this works. Yeah, it does work, it's fine. So there you go, what I've done, so if my number is even, then we're going to echo my number is even, or it'll be 11 is odd, or 11 is even, whatnot. So I've used that to change that. But essentially inside our function what we've done is we've figured out by exploding on the decimal point whether or not our number is odd or it's even. Now I can call back this function anytime I like, but there is another way of simplifying this even further if we wanted to. I'm going to put that one there. Odd. But by doing that, I'm going to change that to true. Okay, because actually no, I'm going to change that to false. Now what I should be able to do is just run is even my number and you should be able to see exactly the same results. Undefined variable my number. What? Where did that come from? Oh, that should be why. See, what this error is telling us here, undefined variable my number, that's because we were referencing this variable that I created down here, up here. And obviously it doesn't exist because my number was created afterwards. Okay, so like back in the introduction to PHP, I explained to you that PHP is chronological. It only does things in order. It works from top to bottom, and once it's gone from top to bottom, it can't then go back and rerun stuff that where information afterwards might have helped. Okay, so in order to use my variable, my number, it has to be defined before we reference it. Okay, so that's what that error was telling us. Just to explain that to you. So 11 is odd. I'm going to actually change this. Again, we're going to come back to our little fun number function. 1, 2, 3, 9. So now what we're going to do is my number is going to be a random number. okay? And our function is going to tell us whether it is even or it's odd, okay? 9,307 is odd, 7,808 is even, 1,174 is even, 7,007 is odd. See, so we have created something that's actually fairly useful, unlike all of our other tutorials, using a function. Now, this is to explain now where the benefits of a function come in, okay? So I am going to create, I'm going to make some random numbers, bear with me. In fact, I'll just make them up off the top of my head. So what I'm going to do is create the function, or declare the function, or call the function, I should say, is even a couple of times, okay, and 3, 2. Okay, I'm going to put 17, 14 apparently. No, I'm not using 17 again. 479 and 790. Okay, so let's have a look at the results. In fact, what I'm going to do, just for ease of reading, is put in a line break after these statements. Okay, 17 is odd, 14 is even, 479 is odd, 790 is even. Okay, so what that's allowed us to do, just by writing this little bit of code here, or a few lines of code, how many lines is it? It is 12, I think. No, 11. 11 lines of code. It saved us from writing, think about it, there's 9 lines of code here. Okay, times by 4 lots of 9, that is, my maths is terrible, 36 I believe. I'm going to have to check that now because I will be so embarrassed if that's not right. 36, oh yeah, he's good, isn't he? Yeah, so it saves us from like 36 lines of code just by writing this function, and we can now call this as many times as we like, okay? Check as many numbers as we like. Now they're going to be the same obviously, but it will carry out all those lines of code just from calling that one line of code, and we can call it as many times as we like, change the number that's in it, just like that, okay? So that's a good look on functions. There is one more thing I would like to go over. For instance, I'm bad terminology to use. There are options with passing variables to our function. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back and pull that back in. Apart from that, I didn't want that. Not going to go. I am going to change this. I'm going to put equals false. Okay. Now what that's saying is that's basically telling PHP that this variable isn't required. We don't have to have this variable. It is optional. Okay. So whereas before we had to have it and it threw us an error if we didn't give it one, this time we're going to say, well, actually we don't need it. It's not a necessity. Okay. And then I'm going to put in an extra if statement. So if number, I'm going to use the function is set. What that's going to do is it's going to tell us whether or not number has been defined, because if number is equal to false, then it's not set. Okay, so if it's set number, then we are going to do all of that. Then actually, we're going to put an exclamation mark in front of is set. Okay, and what that's going to do is that's going to reverse what it will tell us. So usually if we put is set number, it'll either return true to say yes it's set, or it will return false to say no it's not set. What putting an exclamation mark in front of is set is going to do is say if it is not set, and then it's going to return true if it is not set, or false if it is set. Okay, so if it is not set, if it returns true, as in it's not set, we are going to define number as a number between 1 and 1,000,000. Okay, that wasn't very good, was it? Okay, so what we're essentially doing is if number's set, then it's obviously it's set and it's going to use number. If it's not set, then we're going to make it for our function. Okay, if the user put one in, and we're going to generate a random number for them. So let's see how that goes. Let's take out that one and that one. Okay, so our third and our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A third and our 8th line doesn't have one. Doesn't have a number, and for some reason that's not worked. It's not set number. It's all saying is set. Okay, we're going to change that. We're going to say if number is equal to false. Okay, that would be an easier way to do it. I was just trying to show you another function in use, but because it's set. There we go. Because by using that and telling PHP that it's false, we have set it, but we've set it with the value of false. Okay, so it's still set, so we can't use is set because of what we're asking PHP is if it is being referenced or it's been defined. It has been defined, it's just been defined with no value. Okay, so we can't use is set because is set is going to tell us whether or not the variable has been defined. So it has been defined, so we need to find out whether it has a value. And number, if it's equal to false or it has no value, then then we're going to generate a random number. Okay, so that's what this has done. Let's just refresh it again. So it's our third and our last number, and it's produced as an odd and an even number. Let's go again. Again, another odd and an even number. 2 even numbers, an odd and an even, 2 odd numbers. So we've introduced an optional variable now, which is something that can be very useful within functions. Okay, so I think I've pretty much gone over all I wanted to cover with functions. Now hopefully the little mini project that we've been working towards, the little mini program we're going to write, I'm thinking it might be perhaps a question and answer. You know, like you used to get those. What were they? Were they balls you used to shake? And you used to ask it a question, shake it, and it used to give you like a randomly generated answer, either yes or no, or maybe, or it seems that way, or you know, a really rubbish thing. That was just a very simple program, really. We're going to try and rewrite that, so that's what we're going to move on to next time. So I'm probably going to do that in a minute, although I've already got a program compiling here, which is taking a while. So if I've got 2 compiling at the same time, it's going to take me forever, and it's going to go so slow. So I'm going to try and get that done tonight. If not, then it'll be tomorrow. Alright guys, so I'll see you next time, and hopefully we'll make our first little program with what we've learned and maybe a few extra things. Cheers then.